In September of 1996, Sofia Silva is kidnapped from her front yard. 5 weeks later, the 16-year-old turns up dead. 7 months later, a pair of sisters, Katie and Kristen Lisk, disappear from their home. 5 days later, they too turn up dead. In both cases, the killer shaved the genital area of his victims, leading police to believe the cases are related. There is, however, a problem with this theory. Relying on trace fiber evidence, detectives have already arrested a man, Carl Michael Rausch, for the Silva killing. Since Rausch was in jail at the time of the Lisk murders, either he's innocent or the killings are not related.
We kind of talked about it amongst ourselves, and we all agreed that, hey, something's not right here. We need to take a closer look at what we got.
Detectives asked the FBI to re-examine the fiber evidence links to Rausch. Analyst Doug Diedrich does the work.
I reviewed all the evidence, and I didn't see it. I mean, they said that the carpet fibers matched up with the van, and I didn't find that. I thought they were different.
Diedrich believes the state of Virginia has made a mistake, seeing a forensic link where there was none, and arresting an innocent man. He shares his findings with the detectives who arrested Rausch.
It was devastating. I couldn't believe it. We got a state forensic examiner here that's made a huge mistake. Based on her report, we've indicted an individual for murder.
On June 16, 1997, the indictments are dropped. Carl Michael Rausch is eventually set free, and investigators admit they most likely have a serial killer still at large. Some 15 miles away, the Richland County Sheriff's Office breaks up its morning brief. Corporal Kevin Pate settles in at his desk to finish some paperwork when a girl runs into the Richland County substation yelling for help.
She basically said, "You've got to help me. I was kidnapped."
The girl tells Pate her name. Pate runs her ID and pulls up Columbia's missing persons report from the day prior. Howell Sinyard is the sexual assault investigator on call. Sinyard takes the lead on the case and sits down with the victim.
She was a small, petite little girl sitting in a chair, and she had one handcuff on. And I noticed the handcuffs were they had fur around them. And in that fur was wrapped a piece of wire to reinforce the handcuffs.
After removing the handcuffs, investigator Sinyard listens to the victim's story. Susan claims she was alone in the front yard of a friend's house watering plants when a man in a green Firebird pulled into the driveway.
A young man got out and approached her and stated he was selling magazines. Then he produced a small handgun and put it up to her neck and told her to follow him to his car. And when she got into the car, she asked him where she was supposed to get, because the back seat area was a large plastic container. And he said in the container. So she crawled into it and he put the lid on it and drove away.
The teenager was driven for about 20 minutes, then lifted out of the car. When the lid came off the container, Susan found herself in a small one-bedroom apartment. Susan tells police she was cuffed and fastened to bondage boards attached to a bed frame. When morning finally arrived, Susan's captor fell asleep.
She waited until he was in deep sleep, and she thought she knew he was in deep sleep when he started snoring. And that's when she took the D-clamp that was around her wrist, and she worked that loose. And once she had that loose, she had one ankle that was tied to the foot part of the bed, and that she reached down and slowly unhooked her leg. And once she was out of the bed, she knew at the door she had one chance to open it.
Sinyard takes Susan's statement and then transports her to the hospital, where the teen is reunited with her family.
It was a waiting room full of people waiting for her to come out. And I gave her a big hug and told her I was proud of her. I said, "He messed with the wrong little girl, didn't he?" She said, "Yes, Dad."
While a family rejoices, investigators race across town to an apartment where they hope to catch Susan's kidnapper. The apartment is rented to 38-year-old Richard Evanis. a convicted sex offender. Neighbors tell police Ivanets had left the apartment earlier that morning. On the evening of June 27th, however, the FBI gets a tip. Ivanets has resurfaced and is scheduled to meet his sister at a pancake house in Bradenton, Florida.
At about 11 o'clock, I received a call from the FBI stating that he was at a restaurant and the local officials had moved in to apprehend him on the federal warrant.
Ivanets cruises into the parking lot in a silver Ford Escort. Officers from Manatee County wait for him to enter the restaurant, where they'll take him down. The suspect, however, catches wind of the setup and bolts, heading south on Highway 41 at speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour. Manatee police follow and call ahead to neighboring Sarasota County.
They sent a message to our communication center that they had been pursuing a car, that the driver of the car was wanted for murder and sexual battery. He'd fled at 100 miles an hour. He did it with his lights off. And we had law enforcement officers who were telling us that he was armed with a handgun that they thought was a .45 caliber handgun. And at that point, I told my officers to go ahead and deploy stop sticks.
Stop sticks are a series of tubes containing steel quills. The quills puncture a car's tires, slowly letting the air out and bringing the car to a controlled stop. Ivanets' car hits the sticks just where Highway 41 turns left along Sarasota's Bay front. His car hits a curb and comes to a stop. An array of police cars immediately surround the vehicle. Sutton has command at the scene. Over a loudspeaker, he instructs Ivanets to show his hands and exit the car.
He ignored repeated commands. Then I want to say he taunted us, because what he did is he showed his left hand only while he continued to have a handgun in his right hand.
Sutton realizes he needs to move quickly and control the scene.
I didn't feel like time was our friend, because the longer he sat there with the loaded gun in his hand, with the realization that he was not going to escape, I thought the more likely that there was going to be violence.
Everybody would have liked to have arrested him and him been alive, because nobody knows what else he may or may not have done.
Most of the detectives who worked the case are convinced Richard Ivanets committed other crimes we will probably never know about. All of the people who worked this case agree on one further thing. Catching Ivanets would have been impossible without the courage of a 15-year-old girl who escaped while her captor slept and led detectives into the lair of a killer.
Well, I think the little girl in South Carolina made this case for us. I mean, if she hadn't escaped, been brave enough to do that and go to the police, we might still be today working this case.